Hello, Washington Commanders family, and welcome to another edition of the Washington Wrap, a single issue 10-minute show where myself, as your host, Chad Ryan, and our co hosts throughout the year always try to wrap up this episode's issue with a 10-minute timer. And this episode, we're going to be talking about just how much of an opportunity, how important it is for the Washington Commanders to start the season 2-0 following their Week 1 win against the Jacksonville Jaguars, and now in Week 2 heading into Detroit and Ford Field to take on the Lions. So we're going to start a 10-minute countdown clock. I'm going to bring in today's co-host Felix Trammell, and we're going to dive right into that. Let's try to wrap it up. All right, Felix, welcome to the show. First things first, 2-0. The Commanders, and in their former versions of the team name, haven't done that in over a decade to start a season. The last time they did that was in 2011. Although after starting the 2011 season 2-0, they finished the season 5-11 behind some pretty terrible quarterback play from John Beck and Rex Grossman. So this Commanders team, this year, this season, how big and how important would it be to start the season 2-0 in your opinion?
I mean, I think you said it best. Just the flip-flop treading 500 that this team is sort of done. They'll have a good win and then have a bad loss. And it just seems to happen in succession. And the usual runs of the team comes in the second half of the year. So I think starting 2-0 would just be proof that the franchise is going in the right direction. Like, there are two games you should win, and you win. So, I mean, that in a nutshell is where the organization is trying to get to, is win the games we're supposed to win. And that would be proof of going 2-0. So even though it's like, well, it's 2-0, we haven't done that. And it's been a long time since we've come out the gate as a very dominant team. And you mentioned the 2011 team. Well, you can take it back to 2008 with Jim Zorn. And we came out the gate real hot then. But that was the last time we came out the gate like 5-6-2. And then that fell apart, as we know. But it's been that long since we've been that dominant at the beginning of a season.
Yeah, and look, I mean, I think the word dominant is interesting to use because the Jacksonville game was a little bit interesting. The offense really did dominate the Jacksonville defense most of that game. Of course, Carson Wentz had those 2 turnovers that have been, hugely critiqued and analyzed and overanalyzed, and we've spent so much time in the last week since that game talking about them, all throughout the Commanders and NFL media landscape. But that sort of hides the lead, that buries the lead a little bit, in that Scott Turner's offense looked dynamic, it looked quick, it looked dangerous. Curtis Samuel looks healthy, Jahan Dotson looks like the real deal, and Terry McLaurin, we know what he is. So, going into Detroit, who we saw put up a lot of points against the Philadelphia Eagles in Week 1, even though that they weren't able to get that win, this offense should be able to continue and build upon that dominance, you'd hope. And then it really comes down to whether or not the defense can do the job. So Week 2, what are you hoping to see in that respect? And, are you concerned about Carson Wentz? Because personally, I'm not after Week 1.
I'm not. And I think I saw what I need to see out of Carson. Getting the ball out of his hands on time to the right place. And even if it was a missed throw, like the first throw of the game was a missed throw, it was the right throw.
Yeah.
And I think we all can live with that, because more chances than not, if he's seeing the right throw, he's going to make the right throw. Good things are going to happen. We finally got to see Turner's offense in its full glory, and it looked like a modern NFL offense. We had players all over the place because you just can't key in on one person anymore, and that's exciting. You don't know, like. We came out the gate and it was Samuel's here, Samuel's in the backfield, Samuel's all over the place, and Jacksonville was trying to get matched up, and that's a good thing to see. So now it allows everyone else to kind of play to their strengths and make the offense even more efficient. So what I'm looking for is, what is Scott going to do on Week 2 based off of what he did in Week 1? So some of the looks showed in Week 1, what's the variation? Because that's where those elite offenses go. So, like, when you see the Kansas City Chiefs and you see the plays they run, and then you're like, oh, I remember that play, but then there's a variation. So it's like there's step 1, but then I want to see step 2 and 3. Where are we going from there? Are we come out with the same exact game plan, which, of course, the Lions have studied because that's all they've done all week. So what's the next step in the offense?
Yeah.
That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah, and look, I mean, Terry McLaurin, with the exception of that huge and clutch play at the in the dying stages of the fourth quarter that saw Washington take the lead, kind of had a quiet week one. Like, it was the Curtis Samuel and Jahan Dotson show. Jahan Dotson won Rookie of the Week, Offensive Rookie of the Week for his week one performance. Curtis Samuel had more touches in game one than he had in all of 2021. So Terry McLaurin, who's going to be going up against his previous college teammate and cornerback Jeff Okudah for the Lions, is going to have an opportunity to not redeem himself, because he certainly doesn't owe us anything in that respect, but bounce back from a week that I think he would himself consider was a little bit quiet. But let's look, because I agree with everything you said about Carson Wentz, so I'm moving on from that. The defense is going to have their work cut out for them, because the Lions and Jared Goff put up, as we said, 35 points against the Philadelphia Eagles in week one. Now, I'm not super high on the Philadelphia Eagles defense, but, we're looking ahead at the Lions week 2, hoping we can go 2-0, and then the week 3, we have the Philadelphia Eagles. So this is a weird opportunity to sort of strengthen and, I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, really solidify your offensive system, because what we know works in week 2 will probably work in week 3 as well, because we're playing two teams who have just played each other and have some similar tendencies. So what are you going to look for out of the Commanders' defense in week 2 that we can build on from week 1 all the way through to week 3 and maybe go 3-0 against the Philadelphia Eagles?
Just role and responsibility. I think that was one of the better games that defensive coordinator Jack Del Rio called. There was a few times where he left linebackers on slot receivers, which I didn't like to see, but I thought he dialed up blitzes at the right time. He used the proper personnel for those type of situations, and what I'm looking for is just I think our defense is a lot more structured than the Philly defense. They're kind of more opportunistic, try to make a big play. Where our defense tries to make an offense more methodical and have to work downfield, give them a bigger chance for mistakes. So I would like to see that. I want to see consistent pressure on Jared Goff, who's been known to get rattled when he gets hit.
Yep.
And hopefully Jonathan Allen will be a full go, because his and Deron Payne's pressure up front just completely changed the second half of that game. Well, the fourth quarter of that game, because the Jaguars couldn't get anything because there was pressure in his face from those front two, realistically.
Yeah. And Montez Sweat had a lot of QB hurries as well. He played a pretty big game in week 1 as well. So, looping it back to the theme of this week's episode, we're looking at how important it would be to go 2-0. If the Commanders can start this season 2-0, well, their next 2 games come against NFC East division rivals, with a game against the Eagles and then week 4 against the Cowboys, where we know they're not going to have Dak Prescott. So while there's no such thing as a gimme in the NFC East, we know that this division is full of chaos and weird things happen. Let's, for the purposes of this conversation, assume that we can beat the Dallas Cowboys in week 4 against quarterback Cooper Rush or whoever's going to be under center for them. That means if we can beat the Detroit Lions this week, that almost takes a little bit of pressure off that week 3 game against the Eagles. We're going into it 2-0, looking ahead. I know the players will say they take it 1 week at a time, and that's fine. But there's a very real opportunity that even if we lose to the Philadelphia Eagles, we can still start the season 3-1 after the first 4 games of the season, including going 1-1 against the NFC East. That's huge, and that's the kind of foundation you can build a playoff season off of. So do you think that puts a little bit of extra pressure on week 2 against Detroit?
Well, I think the pressure is on themselves. I think they see Detroit as a very winnable game. Because they want to match up with Philadelphia. So I think they want to go into that 2-0. So I think there's a little bit more pressure on them. But like you were saying, you have the Cowboys, and then you have the Titans who didn't look good at all against the Giants.
Nope.
Excuse me. Then you have the Bears and the Packers.
Yep.
That's a very winnable stretch. And then with the Colts didn't look that good as well. So you're talking about you're not seeing a team that looks very, very good until the Vikings in week 9.
And this team knows how to beat Kirk Cousins.
And that's the first time Kirk Cousins will come back. So that game will have added meaning. But if you can get in that stretch 6-2 or something like that, then the pressure's no longer on, because we need to find wins where you can, because there are no gimme wins in the NFL. Every win is hard earned. And Jacksonville's not as bad of a team as people think they are. Doug Peterson's got them in the right direction. he will right that ship down there, and that's a pretty good young team.
Yep.
So you got to take the wins as they are, because you can, as you saw across the league week 1, wins were hard to come by for a lot of teams that we expected to be dominant.
Yep. Well said. Well, we are in the last 30 seconds, so this is the hurry up offense portion of the Washington Wrap. I really do feel that this team controls their own destiny at the moment, which is a luxury that they haven't had often in previous years, for a myriad of reasons, from injury to poor play to poor coaching, etc. But if the team can beat the Detroit Lions this week, which I think they can and should, starting 2-0, and as we've just noticed, the schedule moving forward is pretty exciting, Commanders fans. There's a lot of opportunity for success on the horizon, and this team has the opportunity to go out and grab it. But that's it. The clock has hit 0. We have wrapped up how important it is and how big an opportunity is for this Commanders team to start the season 2-0. Felix Trammell, always a pleasure talking Washington football with you, my friend. Folks, if you're watching this on YouTube or social media, if you're looking at the video version of this podcast, you'll see his Twitter handle beneath his name there. But if you're listening to this podcast version, you can find him at Blessed Commander. That's bless with a D, no E, because there's a character limit on names, I'm assuming. But he is he does great work. He's a great follow on Twitter. Make sure you're getting behind him. You can find me on Twitter at ChadWeekoTWW, and you can find the Washington Wrap everywhere on the internet just by searching the Washington Wrap. Felix, always fun, my friend. Let's do this again, hopefully next week, for a 2-0 Washington Commanders team.
Yep, can't wait.